And the idea of that sales funnel is as they're getting closer to decision, hopefully you're in front of them at the right point, right? So that you're there to kind of help them.
I guarantee you a year from now, 2 years from now, things are going to change. And what used to work may not work as well.
But we have to understand like what our responsibilities are for the business. And one of those responsibilities is to bring in business. I mean, you have to be looking at these things because if you're not looking at them, you're not aware of them, they could lead to a bigger problem later on.
Welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. My name is Jamie Irvine, and in this episode, we're going to talk about how to stop your pipeline from leaking. And it's really not about getting another fancy tool. I think what we're going to learn is that it's all about establishing a revenue process. And to help me with that conversation, my guest today is Jason Kramer, president at Cultivize. Jason, welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. So very glad to have you here, sir.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate the invite.
So let's get our conversation started with maybe some clarification, making sure we're all on the same page. So when we talk about the definition of a sales funnel, what is it from your perspective? And is it the same thing as a sales pipeline?
No, I don't think it is. So to me, a sales funnel is everything you're doing to try to get that conversation, that first conversation with somebody. It could be the marketing you're doing to drive somebody to the website, to get somebody to call you, to get somebody to walk into the retail store that you have. And there's several steps depending upon the business, right? They could be direct mail, there could be all these different things. And the idea of that sales funnel is as they're getting closer to decision, hopefully you're in front of them at the right point, right? So that you're there to kind of help them finalize that decision and hire you ultimately for whatever they need. Whereas if you look at the pipeline is you've already established some type of rapport, some type of dialogue with them, or they filled out a quote request, or they came into the store and they're like, hey, I need this repair done. And you're working on the quote. And now it's going through, okay, well, what are the steps in order for me to get this person not only from in my door, but for me to get the check from them and the payment from them? And those steps could vary depending upon the business. It could be, just working on a proposal, right? And sending out the proposal, giving them an estimate, but then it could be the follow-up, right? Because it might take them, a few months or a few weeks to make that decision, depending on their circumstances and the cost.
Okay, so yeah, I'm thinking of a repair shop, right? They're trying to get people to come to the shop and bring them their equipment. We also have the people who are in mobile who are going out to the customer, but they still need them, they need people to find them, and they need people to maybe book that emergency roadside repair, or to come and have a conversation about setting up a service contract and doing preventative maintenance right at their location. So, okay, I understand the difference between the funnel and the pipeline now. So what is the top reason that someone's sales funnel would be leaking and would be missing opportunities then?
So it's the P word, right? And it's may not be what everybody thinks, but it's process. And so when there's no process and you have the mentality, not because you don't care, but because you're running a business, you're busy doing things, you're going from job to job, or you're dealing with customers coming in, working on the repairs. When you know the process, the mentality is, I'm going to get to it when I have time. And what happens? You get to it when you have time, but that time might be end of day, might be end of the week, might be end of the month. And that person might have already moved on. And so the leakage really becomes when you're not consistent on how you close that deal. And that's the simplest way to explain it.
Who's the most vulnerable to those kinds of leaks then in a sales funnel?
So when you don't have somebody that is dedicated for their job to close those deals, right? Or to even work the deals. So imagine you're in a small organization where you're working the front desk, but when no one's there, you're in the shop doing the work. And so you're busy, right? You're doing a lot of different things, and I'm a business owner. I wear many hats as well, but we have to understand like what our responsibilities are for the business. And one of those responsibilities is to bring in business, right? And so that if that's your job, you have to have a way that is going to remind you to say, oh, we had 3 people come in today. I need to call them before the end of the day. I can't wait till tomorrow. Because if I wait until tomorrow, they're probably maybe going to competitors. And if that competitor got back to them with a price that they liked by the end of the day, I just lost the sale. And I didn't even have the opportunity to present what I can do for them. And so those are the people that are most likely to be systematically failing at the follow up and having the leaks is they're just too busy and they're not organized and they don't have a system to follow.
Okay, so let me lay out kind of a scenario for you. So you have a repair shop that also has a couple service trucks that goes out and does mobile. They've invested in money in a website. They have gotten somebody to tighten up their Google business listings. They are doing a little bit of social media, maybe a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on LinkedIn. Maybe they're doing some real videos, things like that. They go to a couple trade shows a year, right? And perhaps maybe they have a little bit of outbound from the perspective of like when they're slow, they have a customer list, they might be sending emails, things like that. I think that's a pretty common situation. They might also be doing a little bit of digital paid ads, but probably not with a real understanding of like how to maximize that. I think I'm painting a picture of kind of like the common situation for a lot of our listeners that are operating these service centers. Walk me through the impact on the business if that's the way they're operating. So if you're listening right now and you go, yeah, that's me. From your perspective, after working with so many companies, like what are they missing in the process? And what would be the impact on their business if they don't go to that next step of establishing a solid revenue process like we talked about at the beginning of our conversation?
Sure. So there's two huge impacts. The first impact is I always tell people if you're spending money to do anything to grow the business, whether it be the things you described, Jamie, with the marketing, the grassroots efforts, whatever you're doing, you're putting either sweat equity or hard money into that. And if you're not tracking that to know, okay, how many leads did we get from that trade show, from that Facebook ad? And not only how many did we get, but how many did we convert into a customer and how much revenue do we actually generate? If we spent the whole day at a trade show and if we're charging, $250 an hour for our labor rate, and I'm not in the shop doing that work, I'm losing that money, right? So there's a cost there for me to be there, plus the cost of the rental, whatever the booth, other things are going on. And if you didn't get enough leads to justify the expense and cost of you being there, then you might as well just, in my opinion, just go burn the money in the back of the parking lot, right? And I know it's a harsh way to say it, but I always equate it to, the listeners today, I'm sure some of them are investing their money, whether they do invest in themselves or they invest it with a finance person. But people that are logical are not going to invest their money in whatever mutual fund, stock market, what have you, and never ask for a report to be like, am I making money on my investment? Because if they were continually losing money, what would happen, Jamie, right? They would pull the investment, right? Or they would change strategy. But with marketing, so many companies think they have to, which I don't disagree with. They have to do marketing because their competitors do it. So they have to do it, but they're not doing it with a full understanding of what does it mean to spend money on marketing if you're not tracking the ROI. And so where that falls short, I've had I've had different companies, but just an example of a home service business who was spending money with a local radio station. And they said to him, well, since you're advertising on the radio with us, you will also, for $1,500 a month, advertise you on our website. He's like, okay, I'll do that. And I said, well, is it working? He's like, well, I don't know. They tell me I'm getting traffic. I'm like, okay, but are you getting traffic? Are you getting sales? And I monitored it for about 3 months, zero. Not one visit from that website to his website, let alone a visit, forget about any conversion. And I was like, you need to cut this off. Like you're just bleeding money. So that's part A. Part B is the operational piece to it. So when you don't have these processes in place, you're manually doing these follow-ups. You're manually doing things that most systems out there today can automate what I call the mundane tasks. And so if somebody has a big job for you, and it's several $1,000s and they're like, okay, I'm going to think about it. You get busy. Everybody gets busy, especially in the industries that we're talking about today. And so you forget to follow up, or you say, I'm going to follow up in a month or, in a week or two, or a day or two. Or you say to yourself, well, they haven't gotten back to me. They probably hired somebody else. And you just dismiss it. Like, I'm not going to bother following up because it's already been a few weeks. I haven't heard from them. So I'm just going to move on to the next thing. And you and I both know, Jamie, that there could be literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars uncovered from automating that follow-up. They were interested at some point. And if they haven't bought that service or that product yet, they're probably going to buy at some point, and it's a question of is it going to buy from you or going to buy from the competitor.
Yeah, actually, as you talk about that, I think about a really common situation, which is that a service center puts out a quote and they don't get it, and it's a price driven decision, and the quality of the service that the competitor brings is poor, and maybe months later they get another chance at it. But if you were consistently in front of that customer throughout that entire process, maybe you get that customer in 3 months instead of 6, right? And or maybe you miss the opportunity altogether, not realizing that they're putting things back out to bid again. I've noticed a lot of my clients, overall, their financial performance of their business is acceptable. So they're spending money on sales and marketing, but they don't have a way of tracking it back to the revenue that's being generated, but they're doing okay. And so there's no 5-alarm fires, so they never dig into it deeper. Do you find that with a lot of the people who you deal with?
Yeah. I mean, it's like if the problem isn't obvious, then there may not be a problem at all, is I think the attitude a lot of people take, especially if they're, in the black, business is good, they're making money, they're paying bills, doing all the things they do, they're growing, even if they're growing 5-10%, whatever it is each year, but they could be doing so much more if they have everything buttoned up. So yes, the leaks that we're talking about don't always indicate that the business is in trouble, because sometimes, just like in life, right, with your health, like there could be things going on in your body that you're just not seeing the symptoms of, that you don't realize. And then you go get a test or an evaluation done, and you're like, oh my God, goodness, I got to take care of this, right? I had no idea this was going on. And so I think a business is no different than, taking care of yourself, on a health level. I mean, you have to be looking at these things, because if you're not looking at them, you're not aware of them, they could lead to a bigger problem later on. And then, it can be harder to fix or more costly to fix.
It's time to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Lowering total cost of operation involves looking at critical components that you put on your commercial vehicles and making sure that you are making the best selection for your application. With all of that in mind, I want to introduce you to the new standard in wheel end protection, the HubCorp's revolutionary X-Tractor. Now, what I like about this product, it's the only line of hubcaps that comes with a built-in 3-stage magnetic oil filter. And this is a safeguard for your critical wheel end components. In addition to that, it is actually a serviceable component on your vehicle now. And so it has a patent-pending hex thread cartridge. And the X-Tractor makes hub oil servicing really simple and easy. And guess what? If you're not servicing that hub oil regularly, you are going to have premature failure of key components. It's just the way it works. So I highly encourage you to get on the wait list today. You can do that by heading over to thehubcorp.com. Check it out, get on the wait list, and you will get the most up-to-date information about when this product is available, and also some price discounts that you won't get anywhere else. So go visit thehubcorp.com today. It's not just fleets and owner-operators that need to look at their total cost of operation and find tools that help them with their business. If you're running a repair shop, then you need tools to streamline your operations, and that's why I recommend FullBay. Now, FullBay has features like streamlined scheduling, real-time inventory tracking, technician efficiency insights, and detailed reports on exactly every aspect of the business that you need to be paying attention to make sure that your repair shop is running as efficiently as possible. And what does this mean for you? Well, it means in the end that FullBay is the very tool that's going to help you reduce downtime and make your shop more efficient, keeping the vehicles that you service on the road where they belong. Check out fullbay.com/power to maximize your shop's productivity today. That's fullbay.com/power. Manufacturers and distributors are a key component in the supply chain, and they play a vital role in keeping trucks and trailers rolling. I'd like to introduce you to Equip 360 by Gen Alpha. This platform helps manufacturers and distributors grow their part sales. But more importantly, it helps them make their customers' lives easier. And that's so important. With real-time insights into inventory, pricing, and order tracking, it's going to keep your customers coming back. Plus, it saves time by automating routine tasks and making repeat purchases simple. I encourage you to explore Equip 360 at genalpha.com, genalpha.com. Check it out today. We're back from our break. Make sure you go and check out the links in our show notes to all of our sponsors. Okay, let's get back to this episode. Jason, what do you need to do if you are listening to today's conversation? You think to yourself, these guys are describing me. I definitely have a leaky funnel. Before you start looking at tools, because there's a lot of tools out there, what do you actually need to do?
So the best thing to do, and this is nothing that anybody should feel ashamed of, because I talk to hundreds of people all the time on any given month, is that you want to get a piece of paper, get a pen, pencil, whatever you like, a crayon, and start writing down what you believe your process is, right? And when I say process, I'm talking about the process for when somebody calls you, walks into the store, emails you, however you get your leads, what's the first thing you do? Do you take out a legal pad and just write down and scribble down their information and try to remember to get back to it? Do you put it into some type of system? Do you put it into a spreadsheet? So that'd be the first thing. And then what's the second thing you do, right? And start writing down those steps. It might only be 3 steps. It might be 10 steps. It doesn't matter how many steps. It's more important about, in your best ability, what are those steps? And then this is the second piece that's really critical. Think to yourself, on average, how long does this take me to go from step 1 to step 2 and from step 2 to step 3? And be truthful with yourself. And then you're going to visually see, like, oh my God, like, this is my problem. Like, you're going to see where the problem is right in front of you on your piece of paper. And that's where I would step, because you're right, Jamie, there are thousands and thousands of different pieces of software. And I always tell people, don't look at the software. Don't look at the shiny object, because the software is not going to solve your problem. It will never solve your problem. I sell software for a living. So why do I say that? Because you have to have the process first. You have to build out the processes of how things are going to work in the business, make things more efficient. Then you find the software that complements what your process is going to be. Because trying to buy software and mold your business into something the software is not providing is a recipe also for disaster.
Yeah, so there's a service that we offer in our consulting business, and we just call it value stream mapping. And we literally will walk you through that process, and we will help you to do that. And it has, all the transfer of information, the physical movement of things, the time allotted. I've got a great template for that. I can show you how to do that. So if you want help with that, definitely reach out to us. Once people take that first step, they've got the map. They can see there's some problems. What are the barriers that people encounter when they try to either, let's say, establish a revenue process or at least upgrade the one that is there, by default?
So I think the number one is that they try to do it on their own. So think if we're talking about people that are, mechanics and in trade, and so you're skilled at that, you know how to do it. But now imagine your next door neighbor who knows nothing about your industry or what you do, and you ask them to do your job. Are they going to be able to do it? Probably not, right? And even if they watch a video, they're probably not going to do it right or do it as well or as efficiently as you're going to do it because you're skilled at it. So I think that's the number two thing that people make a mistake on is, so whatever software you're using, or if you're not using software, find a consultant, like someone like, me at Cultivize or Jamie or whomever, right, to help you understand how to transition from now that we have our process to what tools do we need. But more importantly, that person is not only going to build things out, right, and make the changes in your software or set up the software for you. And this is the key. You want that person to be the same person that's going to train you and your team on how to use it. And you want that same person to be willing to stay with you for the next 1 to 2 years to check in with you and make sure that things are working the way that it was designed to work. And be also willing to make changes if things aren't working the way that they're expected to work. And that's really where you see things shine, because trying to do it on a DIY basis, Harvard Business Review did a review, an article actually a few years ago. It said that over 73% of businesses will fail at trying to implement their own software like we're talking about today, because it's just very technical. And if you don't, they make it look easy, but the reality is anything's easy if you know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, it's extremely difficult.
Maybe I've worked with you and I helped you do the analysis and got your value stream map in place. And then we present it to you, Jason. We say, here's the steps that they're currently doing. and then you analyze it and you optimize it and you make some recommendations, and you are willing to partner with this individual to put this software in place and help them with their revenue, and that's great. That's all been done. It's been my experience that setting it all up is hard, but maintaining it is even harder. So what are the things that people should watch out for as they get into that to year one, year two? Why is that time frame so important?
So now we're going to go with the A word, accountability. There has to be accountability, not only for the people using it on the sales side, but the owner of the business, right? Or the manager, if there's a sales manager overseeing people. They also have to be invested in using the tool as well, because how could you have your employees expected to use something you're not even using or paying attention to? So in my professional opinion, you have to have everybody involved. The second piece is you have to have somebody, generally, I believe, from the outside that knows that tool really well to stay on board. So for example, Jamie, when we work with a new customer, we're meeting with the sales and sometimes the marketing team, usually at a minimum, like every 2 to 3 weeks for a few months, because we want to make sure that the old behaviors they had don't resurface. And so we're tracking and making sure that they're doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And then as we feel comfortable and they feel comfortable, we taper off and we stay on board every month indefinitely. I've had clients for 6+ years. We still meet with them every month because there's things that change in the industry, things that change with products or services. There's always room for improvement. And that's the one thing that I would like to stress, because I think it correlates to what you just asked me. Setting up a system like this, a CRM, it's not you set it up and you walk away and you're done. It's not like building a house or, even a repair on a truck. Eventually parts wear down. Things have to be replaced. Things have to be lubricated and changed. A CRM is just like that. You have to be monitoring it because there is going to be modifications that have to be made as time goes on.
I've been doing this thing that I've been doing for quite a few years now. I started podcasting actually in 2017, but I started the Heavy Duty Parts Report in 2019. Been consulting since 2020. This decade, man, that we are going through, the 2020s, every single year, I feel like there's a new existential threat and there's significant change to the way that, first of all, the problems that people are facing, but the way that you're going to be able to communicate with them. Like, I've just seen so much change. And when I think back to the way that I found clients for, in the early years, like 2020, 2021, completely different results I'm getting from the same marketing efforts today in 2026. Like, it has changed so much. So even if you have it all set up perfect this year, I guarantee you a year from now, 2 years from now, things are going to change. And what used to work may not work as well. And there may be new things you have to do. So yeah, I can see the benefit of having that partner. We also have clients that we've had for many years. And there's something to be said to be an accountability partner, to hold people accountable, to remind them of what they committed to, and then also to provide them with that expert guidance as things are dynamic and change. So we've had a great conversation today. Tell me a story of someone. Where were they? When did you meet them? How did you help them? And what ended up happening?
Yeah, so I got a great story. It's in the trades, but it's a roofing company. It's a story I like to tell because it's a story that correlates to what we're talking about today and is very common. So this company was a family-owned business. They were doing, when I met them, probably about $7 million roughly in business a year. Been around for 20+ years. And they only had a couple, I think at that time it was like 2 or 3 salespeople, Jamie, working in the company. And they were using a spreadsheet. And they were doing about 1,000 quotes estimates per year. Okay. So decent amount of volume. And what I realized early on, well, first of all, the problem was they had no CRM, right? So that was the first thing we had to solve for. But then as I started talking to them, I realized that because they were a small team and what we were discussing earlier, after about 5-6 weeks, and we're talking about big projects, just like the repair projects. I mean, we're talking projects $10,000 to $30,000, on average. After 5 or 6 weeks, they just stopped following up. It's like, okay, we haven't heard back. They probably hired somebody else, so they just don't want to go forward. And they just moved on to the next batch of leads they got. And I was like, but do you know that they hired somebody? How do you know? And they're like, well, we don't know. We just don't have the time, right? And the organizational capacity to be consistently following up. And so I said to them, well, like on average, we know that you could close a roof in about, anywhere in a good day, like, in a week or two, but it could take, a few more weeks. I said, what's the longest it's taken you to close a roofing project? Well, we don't know. We don't have the data. I said, could it take more than a year? They're like, I don't know. Like maybe. They had no idea. I said, well, let's create an automated follow-up where, because we collected a lot, and this is going back to like the importance of data collection, right? So if you're writing things down on paper, it's not going to really be any value. But when someone was requesting an estimate from this company, we knew the style of house they had, what type of roof they needed. We knew their address, the city they lived in. We had all the little nooks and crannies of data, right? So when we followed up with them via an email, it would come from the sales rep that they already met and spoke to. It wouldn't come from some generic email. And I'd say, we loved visiting your lovely home at 123 Main Street. It was a beautiful colonial. So like, even though it was automated, it made it feel like the salesperson really was paying attention to them and writing that email. And these emails went for about 18 months. And throughout the cadence of these emails, and they were always, what I would call like a simple text email. It wasn't anything like they were trying to sell them hard. It was just saying, hey, like, we came to your home, we met you, you liked us, we liked you, kind of thing. Did you hire anybody? Are you still interested? And if you did hire somebody, would you mind letting us know why? And we had a link to a 1-question survey. And it was just like, our price was too high. We took too long to get back to you. A friend did it for us, right? The common reasons. And what we discovered was that at the end of 2025, as we started this last year, we helped close over $4 million in revenue for this company from all the follow-up. And not only did we close that, we were able to see which specific emails influenced them to make a decision. And it was the emails from month 15 and on. It wasn't the emails before that were converting them over. And so the interesting thing about that is two things. One, the salespeople absolutely loved it because they're like, this is amazing. Like, I'm getting now commission for things I did almost a year ago or more than a year ago, and I haven't done anything to close the deal. It just sort of closed on its own. And the second thing it did was get confirmation of why they were losing deals. People were telling them and being honest, why they were losing deals. So now they could refine their sales strategy to fix that problem and to close more deals. So, and that's a story that resonates, Jamie, through a lot of our clients, because regardless of what industry you're in, everybody is trying to sell something. And most businesses have some type of quote or estimate or something they're providing, unless you're selling a bouquet of flowers or something like that, right? And it's like an impulse buy or a quick sale. Everything else requires some level of follow-up. And the reality is that a lot of companies just don't have a system to do that, and therefore it doesn't get done consistently.
As you're telling that story, I'm thinking about like a repair shop and that has a couple service trucks. And I'm thinking about how they have a bunch of different types of customers. They've got fleets that don't do their own maintenance and require a service provider. They have customers who maybe need both parts and service. They have customers that are owner operators and that, are always looking for a good quality service provider in the area. Like, there's so many opportunities and kind of different. Yeah, I could see how you would set up 2 or 3 different sequences depending on who the customer was. And that feedback would be so important, right? Because sometimes it is price, but sometimes there's other issues going on that lead a fleet to choose one service provider over another. And knowing that would be so advantageous to be able to make strategic changes to your business to present more value. So fantastic. Yeah, that's excellent.
And just like we know with like Google reviews or any online review site, Trustpilot or any of the travel sites, people are a lot more comfortable giving a review electronically to the anonymous person than they are to you to your face or on the phone. And so, and some people are uncomfortable asking, the question too. So having that as part of your, it's okay to say no. Just, we don't mind. Just let us know you're saying no and we'll move on. Like, it's no problem, really. We're not going to be offended, but if you don't ask, you don't know.
Yeah, as one of my sales mentors taught me, no's are just the signposts that lead you to future yeses. So, so I really appreciate the time we've spent together. If there's just one thing you want people to remember about today's conversation, what's that one thing?
I would say the one thing is, to think about the complacency that I think a lot of people have in their business. And I get it, right? I mean, we're by human definition, we're trained to follow behavior and do things in consistent fashion. So I think today, just think about like, what am I doing that I can change and just pivot just a little bit? That can make actually a huge difference, for me, for in my business or for my business itself. And so I think if you think about that and you just think about even writing down, even if you backtrack to not about the process, but like, what does my day look like? Like, what do I do throughout the day? Like, just writing that down, and sometimes you're like, you could increase your productivity just by like visualizing what you're actually doing day to day. So for me, I'm a organizational type person. I like things organized. So, if I could find some way to help people get more efficient in that, that's a huge win, even if they don't change their software.
You've been listening to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I'm your host, Jamie Irvine, and we've been speaking with Jason Kramer, president at Cultivize. To learn more, go to cultivize.com. Links are in the show notes. Jason, thank you so much for being on the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie. Anytime.
And thank you for listening and watching. If you haven't already, follow our podcast. Regardless of what platform you're on, you want to hit that follow button, and that way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes. We also have an extensive back catalog of almost 400 episodes on heavydutypartsreport.com, so head over there today. And as always, I want to encourage you to be heavy duty. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to subscribe to the Heavy Duty Parts Report YouTube channel, and click here to watch another great episode.